Hey everyone, welcome to the channel and welcome to the new year of 2016. This is going to be an exciting year for hopefully a lot of us. Okay, so what we're going to actually build today is a very simple UI collection view, and in the middle you'll see what that looks like. Now, a collection view is used typically to show a list of items. For example, on the right, you'll see this is what the newsfeed of Facebook sort of looks like. It's not exactly there, but it's I'm going to use that to showcase what a collection view does. So this is a typical list of views that are containing, labels, buttons, and image views. So let's get into building something very simple that can be later on changed to look like UIs that are on Facebook's apps or Twitter's apps. All right. First off, let's go ahead and open up Xcode. And I'm going to create my application using the single view application template to start things off. Let me give it a name here, just like that. Next, and create. Now, before I start to do anything with my project, I like to just simply execute the run with Command R and see what we get. All right, there we go. By default, it uses the 6S Plus, which is quite big. So I'm going to change that to use the 6S. I'm going to hit run again. And you'll notice the simulator is a lot smaller in terms of the size that it occupies on your screen. And that's going to allow me to have more space to work with so that I can show you a little more in terms of what I'm going to try to do. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do might be strange because not a lot of people do this, and that is I'm going to delete this storyboard from the app, and I'm going to run the app now. It should crash. Let's see what it does. All right, there we go. It says that we're missing a storyboard named Main. Let's fix that right now. All right, so with that removed, I'm going to run the project again. And let's see what it does. Black screen, but the app is not crashing. So that's a good thing. Now let's go into the app delegate and make sure to fix this so that it'll show us something else like a white screen. And in order to do that, let's go ahead and create our window manually with code. Let's see. There we go. So sometimes I forget what the code looks like as well, but I'm sort of cheating because I have another screen showing me what the code looks like. So there we go. And we need one more line of code to make sure that it is visible. Let's run that now and see what happens. All right. So instead of the black screen, we're now getting a different crash message. And that message says that we're missing a root view controller. Let's go ahead and fix that by creating that root view controller and then setting it on the window. I'll show you how to do that right now. All right, so I've instantiated a UI navigation controller with our view controller that the template project helped us create, and I'm going to set it as the Windows root view controller. Let's see what that does by running. All right, the crash is gone, but we're seeing a black screen, which is okay. It means that everything's working, but if you're not convinced, let me add one more line of code to convince you that this view controller is actually being presented. So I'm going to change the background color to red, like so. I'm going to run it one more time, and you'll see that here we go, a red view for the view controller that we set as the main root controller. Now, before we move on to building the rest of the app, let's go back to the Photoshop comp and look at what we're trying to build here. Now, your next question might be, how do we get this UI collection view into our view controller, right? You know, that's a good question. Let me show you how to do that right now. So let's go back into Xcode. And the simplest way of getting a UI collection view is to actually use UICollectionViewController provided by Apple, like this. Let's rename our view controller first by calling it Custom Collection View Controller. And then instead of subclassing UI View Controller, let's subclass UI Collection View Controller, like so. I'm going to show you what this class looks like. It is actually itself a subclass of UI View Controller, and it adopts the UICollectionView Delegate and the data source protocols. Also, it comes with a property that we're going to have to use, and it's the collection view itself. So let's go back to our custom collection view controller, and now that we've properly subclassed it, we can run the application again, and let's see, it's going to say that we need to use our class like that, and it should crash. Let's see what it does. There it is. Taking a look at this message here, says that we're missing a layout, or I guess technically it says UI collection view must be initialized with some type of layout. So let me show you how to fix that right here by creating the layout like so. And then I'm gonna go ahead and also create the collection view controller, our custom version of it, in a separate line. So I'm gonna have to replace it here, like that. Now let's run the application again. The crash is going to go away, but instead of seeing our red screen now, you might be asking, why is it black? Right? So let's go back and I'll show you how to change the color back to red. Right? Let's run that. And voila, it's red again. And here's the explanation as to why. UI View Controller has a view, and that's all it has. Now UI Collection View Controller also has that view because it's a subclass of UI View Controller. And because this controller now also contains a collection view that is this the child of the view controller's view, we now have to change the collection view's background because it's what is being presented inside of the view. Might be a little confusing, but just know that collection view is what you're seeing instead of view by default. All right, now that we have our controller set up, we need to tell it how many cells to return. Let's do that right now. First, let me delete this unnecessary method and implement the number of items method right there. And for this example, I'm just going to return a 3. This is just an arbitrary number. And next thing we do is we have to actually tell the collection view controller what type of cell we want to return. Let's do that right now. With this method, we actually have to return a UICollectionViewCell. So first, let's do this. What is it that we want to return? So here is how the collection view works. We need to first register the collection view with a cell to a matching identifier. Might be confusing, but let me type that out to show you what that means. Let me create my identifier. Like so. Just a string like that. Instead of the colon, we need a equals. And let's use that cell identifier here. Now it's going to complain about this custom cell class. So I'm going to create that class by subclassing UICollectionViewCell. Like so. And now the only remaining error to fix is to get the cell, and to do so I'm going to dequeue it with the matching identifier and the index path that is specified here. So gonna set that cell there. I'm gonna return it like that. And if I run the application now, we'll get exactly the same thing. And that's kind of what we would expect, because the cells are actually transparent completely, so we can't tell that the cells are there. Now to actually fill the cell with a label, let's do this. All right, and then I'm gonna fix this Swift specific compile error. You can sort of ignore why I'm doing this, but it's important that we have this here so the compiler doesn't complain about it. Now, inside of init with frame, I'm going to create a method called setupViews and call it from within init frame. And the reason for that is because init frame is actually called when the collection view here dequeues a cell. So I know that upon that happening, we can have a hook called setupViews that inside of that hook will add a custom label like this. First, let me create it in code. This is all done in code because we don't really want to touch a storyboard here, and you'll see some of the advantages of doing so. All right, let me type this out and explain to you what it's doing. All right, here's how we instantiate a name label in our custom cell and kind of tell it what the label should look like, or at least what the text should say. So this is relatively new syntax in Swift, where we can declare a block with this curly brace, and then we can execute that block with the open and close param or parens. And upon the execution, it's going to return a label, specifically this label, and it's going to set name label to that label with a custom text. And we can now access that name label just like that. With Swift, we don't need the self, so let me remove that. And I'm going to add some constraints so that the label will show up in our view. Now, the old style is to use frames, but constraints are a lot better because they'll support things like iPhone 5s, 6s, 6 Pluses, and iPads with very simple, basic setup work. Okay, so I know this looks very ugly and looks very long, but let me type it out and explain to you what the constraint actually does. All right, I know it looks ugly, and here's the explanation as to what it's doing. With this constraint, we're going to use this visual format, it's what Apple calls it, and tell it to span horizontally with this H from this pipe, which means the left bounds, to the right bounds with this pipe. And inside those two bounds, we're going to say expand this view that we're specifying by v0 completely horizontally so that it touches the left bound and the right bound. And so the question is, how do we know what v0 is? Well, inside of views, we provide it with a dictionary, and we say, okay, here's a string and here's a actual view. And with that string, if we call it v0 and say that it is the name label, this visual format will just know exactly what you mean. All right, so I'm going to add not just the horizontal constraint, I'm going to also add the vertical constraint. And here we go. So if we run that now, we should be able to see parts of the custom text, but instead we're getting a huge it's not an error message, it's a sort of a warning. And I'm just going to get rid of that by turning off the resizing masks. There we go. We get our custom text, but it's a little truncated, or it's cut off. The reason is because by default, cells are 50 pixels by 50 pixels in width and height. So let's change the cell size. How do we do that? We do that by first implementing this delegate or this protocol, and then inside of that protocol, we can command click into it, and we can see that size for item at index path is one of its optional methods. So let's go ahead and implement that method. Now, how do you can't really see in this short little box, but I know at the very last layout method, we'll get size of the specified item cell. Go ahead and implement that. And hopefully that's self-explanatory just entire view's width with 200 pixels in height. Let's run that one more time. And then we'll get that. And to further illustrate exactly what the cell is rendering, let's do this. And run. With those two colors set, we'll be able to see the cell's full height with the collection view's background and the default gap of, I believe it's 10 pixels for each cell. And there we go. We have our collection view with the cells rendered properly. And to further illustrate how easy it is to change these constraints, let's push the text label just 16 pixels from the left edge like that. So I didn't have to go into a storyboard to change the constraint, that constraint button, and then finding your constraint in that list of maybe 10 or so constraints typically, and modifying the actual value for that cell. It's not that it's difficult, but it requires a lot of time and it requires a lot of I guess you're not maximizing your productivity with all the time it requires to get into the storyboard, load it up, find your view controller, find all the buttons, and mess around with these UI tools. Again, it's not bad. I just like this way better because I have pretty much full, precise control in how I want my views to be rendered within just a few keystrokes. It hopefully is easier. It's easier to me, at least. Finally, the last remaining question you might have is, how do we get the custom text to say some of the things that we were seeing in the comp? For example, Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, and Steve Jobs. Let's go back and change the application so that we can support variable text. I'll do that by first creating an array that contains those 3 specific strings. Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. Items count. And no. Names. And custom cell. Well, let's first typecast that as our custom cell. And we know that it's our custom cell, so we can use the bang operator here. And we can access the name label on that custom cell like that. Okay. Last fix right there. I've created a list of names and I've typecasted our custom cell to be the class that we know it should be. And we're setting the text with the names like that. Let me run that and we'll see that the names are going to be set properly inside of the simulator on each of the cells. Cool. That's pretty much everything that we want to build today, and hopefully you'll be able to see some of the pros and cons of storyboards versus pure coding and pure programmatic approach on building your iOS applications. Remember, there's no better way in doing one particular task, But there are ways that you can change or modify your workflow so that tackling certain issues like building out a quick UI or building out the UI so that you can modify it later is easier to maintain and easier to kind of like explain to other people what's going on and how to refactor some of your code so that other teammates can use it. And it's helpful to understand like fully how things should work inside of code or storyboards. All right. Hopefully that didn't run too long. I hope you enjoyed this little mini tutorial here. I don't think it was too bad. And I'll release videos consistently in the week. Hopefully one that's kind of simple like this. This is not too simple, but it's on the easier side is what I would consider it to be. And maybe another video will be coming out where I might go through how to build an application that looks like this here. And it's very similar to Facebook's newsfeed. It contains labels and text. I'll go through how to build out each cell programmatically. You'll see it's not too hard. It's a bit of, a different thinking style. The logic is different compared to placing labels on a storyboard and placing components on the screen. You'll need to do it through code, and I'll walk you through exactly how I like to do it. Okay. So if you like the video, make sure to, subscribe, leave a comment, ask any type of question you want to ask. I know I might not have gone through everything like I wanted to because, time constraints and whatnot. And like the video and make sure to subscribe because I'll be releasing videos and you'll definitely want to know that, or you want to know when the videos come out. All right. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.